I'm Sarah. I'm 34 years old. I'm a MyLab.
In Bases 10, we bring the connection between shadow beings, mind control, alleged US and UK military, the Greys, child abuse, and ceremonial psychic programming in one simple package, Sarah Stanga, who claims to have seen James Casbolt while a child at one of these rituals. The following material requires parental guidance. It is shocking and simply terrible, if true. And until we have evidence, we must consider this as spoken testimony, and that's all. The blogs of Sarah Stanga.
Okay, Sarah, we left you with your earlier childhood.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, you met a guy called James Casbolt.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
Okay, the story there is I remember being in some kind of military facility down in the southwest of England. I remember that there were quite a few children playing, as they usually were. It's in the same playroom that I described before, and certain children were kind of picked out for their abilities and given these collars to wear that had like little flashing lights on. And then as soon as we put these collars on and then somebody set some kind of control, all of a sudden me and these other children were no longer in the playroom, we were somewhere else. There was maybe 12, 13 of us.
You were transported?
Yeah, we were either transported somewhere else, or those collars gave us the illusion that we were somewhere else. But
Can you, at some period of time, draw that? Provide a drawing of that?
Yeah, that's fine.
With
yeah,
a sort of silver, gold?
It was like a silver collar, and it had red and blue, kind of like little spots or lights or gems or whatever they were on that flashed. And there was a handler there who had the remote control to set them on and set them off. And when they were activated, I just remember being transported somewhere else. I remember that all of a sudden I went from being in a playroom with parquet flooring to being somewhere where there was kind of it was quite sandy. There were rocks and big huge stones around, and there were mountains in the background.
What type of stones?
Just
Stonehenge?
No.
Just big round rocks?
No, just big round rocks, big round boulders that were lying around on the landscape. There was a blue building, a big kind of square blue building that had some kind of antenna on the top of it.
What type of roof did it have?
Just a flat top roof. Just a flat top roof.
Do you think it would be European somewhere? Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England? Styles of buildings got a rough...
It was just very plain, nondescript, blue building. It really was.
Big windows, double doors, double windows,
there was a doorway. There was a blue doorway. Did it have
the windows which open in the middle or go up and down?
I don't even...
Just gives a vague idea of how it might be.
It was just a big blue square building. It had a doorway. I think there were two. There was a window maybe either side of the door.
Was it sort of Georgian architecture?
No,
plastered blue or painted blue?
It was just a very, very standard box blue. It's
just was artificial. I mean, it's like was it made of brick or?
It was definitely
stone?
It was made of some kind of brick or stone, but it was just very plain. That you couldn't see any bricks per se. It was just, like when you've got a plaster wall and it's just very smooth all the way around.
Was it was it grassy? Was it?
There was no grass around that I remember.
Gorse bushes?
No, there was no grass or gorse bushes or anything like that at all.
So what was on the ground?
It was just kind of like gravelly sand and then some big boulders around.
Granite-y type stuff?
No, more along the lines of more soft, maybe more
limestone?
like or sandstone even. Just that kind of thing there. There was other children there, girls and boys,
So were you clothed? How were you?
We were all.
How many were you? What sort of?
We were all
what
we
sort
were all
of-
clothed. I don't think there was any more than 12 or 13 of us. There wouldn't have been any more than that.
And were you just standing there?
We were all given new toys to play with. Is the first thing
This
that
is
I remember.
inside the building now.
No, we're all still outside. We're not inside.
What sort of vehicle were there? Was there any other vehicles?
I don't remember any vehicle there at all, and I don't remember any of the children going inside the building either. This blue building. I just remember that it was there in the background. No, we were all just outside wherever this was. I remember the mountains in the background had a pinky colour. They had a pink.
Snow on them, or
No, there was no snow on them. They were very, very bare, but they were slightly pink in colour. I remember there was a pink alien entity there who had really long fluttering black eyelashes and some kind of little frilly apron on. It was really, really weird, and she said that she was mother, that she was our mother.
what type of alien is this?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a grey, and that the pink kind of cartoon character alien that I saw is just some kind of screen or telepathic projection.
Like the Pink Panther?
No, not like the Pink Panther, just kind of like some. She was just a pink alien entity, and that was just there to represent mother. And you know, I even remember her handing out milk and cookies. You know, and she was kind of like there.
No, you said cookies. That's an American phrase.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, were the Americans there?
I do remember General Schwartz was there again. Yeah, he was there in the background, and we were all given new toys to play with. The child.
What are the toys?
Well, there was a young blonde boy who was given something that resembled like a toy ray gun to play with, and he had a teddy bear with him, this brown fluffy teddy bear, and with this gun he was making it levitate and floating it around the air, and he was quite excited by this, and he kind of managed to get this teddy bear in and place it over on a rock. And then he aimed it at me and put me on top of a boulder, and I was quite shocked, and then it was kind of quickly whisked off him, and he was told, no, you don't play on it with the other children, just do it like this. But he had this gun that he was kind of levitating other toys and things around with, which was quite peculiar, quite bizarre.
Was he a chosen boy? Was he a favourite or anything?
I think in one way or another we were all favourites in one way, but yeah, he was chosen for something.
So how does this bring us to James Casbolt?
Well, I just remember
And how do you know it was James Casbolt?
It's just a gut feeling. It's just an absolute gut feeling. That's the only way I can describe it. It's just a gut feeling and intuition. And I just remember this 5.5-year-old boy with short dark hair who was really, really empathic, really, really kind of a sensitive little boy, really, and still a little bit of a loner compared to the other kids. He kind of stood apart from everyone else. I remember the t-shirt he was wearing was navy blue with yellow and red stripes, and he had some kind of either beige or grey shorts on and shoes. And I just remember him being incredibly sensitive, incredibly empathic, and very considerate little boy, really, who didn't seem in the least little bit happy about who he was or what he was or why he was there. And whilst a lot of the other children were just kind of getting along and playing with the toys and what have you, and doing what they were asked by the people.
So he was one of the kids.
Yeah,
in that group.
Yeah, and I mean, it could be completely wrong. It could be completely false. I could have just attached that to that little boy, that it's James Casbolt, but it just instantly.
How does James Casbolt enter into this picture?
He was.
How does he? Where does he come from in your experience?
He comes from somewhere in England, basically. That's all I know about him, and at that time, and that he's just been chosen for some kind of program or operation that they're putting him through. That's all I know. I don't know anything else. I mean, I'm only approximately 5 years old myself in this memory, and so that's all I know about him. And I know that he's just very sensitive, and he doesn't get too involved with some of the, he's very empathic towards the other children, and he always wants to go up to help, but he doesn't, he holds back, because I think all of us at one time or another have been stopped from developing too much of a emotional or empathic connection with each other, to too much, you know, we're kind of stopped from doing that, and I think he kind of, that's how he was how and why he was behaving the way that he was behaving, basically.
So we're at a very young age.
But he was definitely singled out, and he was definitely at that point being chosen for something. And
it's the 15th of December 2011. I'm in my flat. I have some unwelcome visitors, some of them who have bilocated or are here astray, who are well-known witches to me, who have decided to come and threaten me because they've heard that I'm going to be doing an interview with Miles Johnston, and they're a little bit pissed off in case I reveal any names of any particular archdruids or high priests that have been responsible for some of the ritual abuse that I've been put through, whether at my lab facilities or whether at various temples up and down and across the country. And they've been threatening me with disclosing names of various people, or even for disclosing that some of the things that happened to me took place in Avebury. They've decided that they need to come down really hard on me, and they need to try and stop me. And they're here in my flat. And I know about putting pentagrams up at the windows and the doors, but believe you me, that doesn't actually stop them from breaking in, because I've tried. And the other thing that they have decided is they are doing their usual trick of honouring me with an invitation just to join them, because if I join them it will all change apparently, and everything will get better. And they've even told me before in the past that I can have my old job back and my old life back, nice big house, with a nice job and a nice boyfriend, or even a really, really nice satanic witch for a husband. Isn't that sweet of them? It's really, really, really fucking shit. So I've also had to delete 3 people off my Facebook list today because as usual, people that are claiming to be mind control or abductees or mind lab victims that have basically snuck through the net and that are basically on further inspection of their friends lists and further inspection of them energetically, they're just dark. And basically, I don't need shit like that in my life. I have enough of it already. I'm due to go down to London this weekend to see some more researchers and some genuine mind lab victims and abductees, and spend some time down there talking to people and also further discussing my interview with Miles Johnston and what it is I'm going to say and do. I have had demonic attack of one kind or another since I woke up this morning. I have an entity again in my aura as a result. My aura has been weakened again. And it's been weakened possibly by shitloads of negative energies being thrown at me, such as by the man who was possessed by a shadow being on the bus the other day. And also by low frequency, non-lethal energy weapons, because that's one of their favourite tricks as well. God bless them. They really don't miss a trick. So these people, basically, some of the priests that they don't want me to mention are people that I know were involved in my lab facilities. And I think the other thing that they're a bit pissed off about is the fact that I also know about some of their archdruid and high priests' connections to the Freemasons that attacked me in Kingston upon Thames when I was breaking free of my programming. And basically they're just here to try and stop me. They don't want me to talk either about what happened at Stephen Haley's house in Enderby and the ritual that took place there, the magic work that took place there with the fire shadow being, or fire demon. They don't want me to discuss either the fact that in a magical circle, apart from me being attacked by this fire demon, there was a man who was blatantly being given some kind of blowjob by an astral entity that was the high priest in command's familiar, apparently. And they probably don't want me to let you know that this man had me under mind control and in some kind of trance, and hooked a succubi into my aura for my protection, apparently. They probably also don't want me to mention that another one of their high priests from a coven in Coventry that also has members here in Leicestershire is affiliated to them, and when I contacted witches through the local pagan moot about 8-9 years ago now, I contacted them because I had a lot of problems with interdimensional entity attack, and I was looking for somebody who knew their shit as an exorcist. And the woman who ran the moot said that she trusted her high priest, and her high priest, it turns out, is a satanic black witch. So they probably don't want me to let you know that there's a whole lot of Satanism going on in Leicestershire and Warwickshire and at Avebury. But it's tough shit now. And whether or not I mention their names publicly, it's certainly still going to reach the ears of certain researchers. I don't care. Somebody needs to know. And as far as I'm concerned, they've put me through so much demonic entity attack this year anyway, and so much astral and magical attack, that it doesn't fucking mean anything anymore when they threaten me with it. And if they really wanted to kill me, they would have done it ages ago. And as I said before, they find it amusing to keep me alive and torment me and torture me anyway, magically and astrally. They find it highly amusing, which is why they've kept me alive. Because they know that I, at one time or another, felt that it was unethical to keep somebody alive who was going through so much trauma and so much distress, that it wasn't worth a person like myself living through what I'm living through, which they also find highly amusing. So but basically, I believe what Joanne Summerscale said, that the balance of power is changing. And I've noticed it not just with myself and what's happening with me, and the fact that I'm very, very close to bringing out into the public what's happening to me and what has happened to me in regard to the magical and psychic attacks and the abuse and the gang stalking and the implants and the mind control, and the fact that I'm still, even now, potentially still triggerable into an altered personality and performing some kind of operation, because it happened in March of this year whilst Prince Charles and Camilla were visiting the county to see a sausage factory.
So what else happened when you were there, or when these collars were put on?
When the collars were put on, they were put on in that normal playroom at the military facility with the parquet flooring, and then, as you know, it wasn't until the collars were activated that we kind of, you know, either dimensionally shifted and were transported somewhere else with these collars, or we were given the illusion that we were somewhere else. I can't 100% say which one of those it is, whether it was just some kind of holographic illusionary technology.
Did your clothes change when you moved?
No, the clothes remained the same. Still had the same clothes on that we had in the previous room.
And were any extra? Well, James, was he in the original class? Were these people were different?
Yeah.
He was in the original class. So
yeah.
It was the same children in that class.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly it went,
mm-hmm.
or appeared to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did things develop from there?
Basically, I remember being put on top of that stone by that little boy, and then, like everybody else, I was given a toy to play with, and I was basically asked to learn how to handle either a little gun or another toy that would kind of like send out projections or sound or what have you, and we were basically interacting with the alien entities in this particular place or dimension or whatever it was. So and we were basically just analysed for what we were doing, to see how well we interacted with each other, the commands that we were given, how well we were suited to whatever toys we were being given to play with.
And how long did this go on for? What developed from this period of time?
I
mean, you're still at the very young age. What happened later on? Let's move on.
What, several years or months later?
Whatever you feel is appropriate.
I know after that basically we were split into further groups. I don't remember ever seeing that little boy that I think was James Casbolt again. I don't.
Are there any other people in the group that you can remember that we should maybe look up elsewhere? Did you get any?
There was a blonde American girl that I made friends with. I remember sharing a room with her in this other dimension at that particular kind of like time, but also at other times.
What kind of room?
It was just kind of like a dorm, basically. There were girls' dorms and boys' dorms, and you were kind of like put into a room with.
Is it sort of in a Nissen hut type thing with the curved type roofs, or was it in a big hostel somewhere? Or what kind of rooms were the dormitories?
They were. I can't remember. I can only remember the inside of the room, and I can remember they were quite well furnished. They were made to feel quite comfortable, quite homely, and basically you shared a dorm with 2 to 3 other children, and they were always children of the same sex as you. The boys and girls weren't put together.
Were they in bunks or?
No, it's just beds, just single beds on the floor. There were no bunks that I remember.
Do you remember any of the nurses or any of the staff that came and went and cleaned or attended or?
The woman with the blonde curly hair and the glasses was there again. There was the same general that was always there, General Schwartz. The same man in the white coat with the German doctor with the coat that I remember as well from the.
What about breakfast, meal times? Where did you go? How long were you there?
I do remember eating breakfast, and I do remember being suspicious of the food as well.
What type of food did you get?
Things like Kellogg's cornflakes, just like normal breakfast cereals, that kind of thing. But I just remember thinking that I didn't really want to eat the food, that it didn't necessarily taste or feel very right. It sometimes made me feel sick. So
it was really standard British Army issue. Hotel food at a bad B&B in England? No?
No, I mean, I some of the other food that I remember was things like, you'd get minced beef with gravy and mashed potatoes and peas and things like that. So, you got a proper cooked dinner. I do remember that.
Just school dinners?
Yeah, like school dinners maybe. Yeah, I'd say more like school dinners rather than a bad B&B.
So, I mean, the reason why I'm concentrating on that is because that has a signature of an English, institution type food. So you'd be in England then.
Yeah.
It's not somewhere else. The food isn't like you don't get. If it was in Europe, you'd get cold meats and stuff like that for breakfast.
Yeah.
And croissants and things. Mm-hmm. So what kind of developments happened to get you to be what you are today? To what I
am today.
Yeah. How did you get? What further developments or training or what sort of things did you do? Or did it suddenly stop?
There are still gaps in memory that I haven't explored all of it yet. I do know that I was being taken at various times throughout my childhood to different facilities and tested and put through some kind of psychic development training. I think I mentioned before about the kind of rituals that we were put through.
What do you mean by psychic development training?
Just kind of asked to do things like, look at a wall and see if there's something hidden inside a wall or inside an object. Like, could you see something that was hidden? Could you find something that was hidden intuitively, or could you sense a presence or an entity? One memory that I do have from sharing a room with this blonde American girl was the room that we were in. I remember waking up at one time in the middle of the night, and there was an entity that for some reason had entered the room. I think it was quite on purpose, and basically I think our task was to either escape from the entity, somehow or another.
What was the entity? What was it like?
I think it was another shadow being, because it kind of it moved like smoke around the room again, and I remember being terrified, absolutely petrified of this thing, and wanting to get away from it. And
get back to the entity on take 2 and that. What do you mean by the entity?
Basically, it was a shadow entity, and again, it moved like smoke, and it came into the room, and it was malevolent. It was there to deliberately frighten us for whatever reason.
So it was training you.
Yeah, I think it was training us, and I think that we were basically supposed to defend ourselves from attack by this entity somehow. So we were basically kind of like forced into a situation. But I think, as usual, this entity was kind of moving to kind of like, to kind of threaten us and make us feel afraid and fearful, so that we would, be forced to use a gift, basically, and use whatever kind of psychic abilities that we had.
So you were being trained to deal with a shadow.
A shadow entity, to deal with psychic attack by an entity, yeah.
So did it come to a time when you actually had to do this in the real world?
Yeah.
So can you remember your first time when you did that?
I can't remember the first time, but I can remember the first time I was asked to remove an entity from a human being was when I was 17 years old. I was at sixth form college. I was dating a guy from this college, whose father and stepmother were into the occult anyway. I didn't consider myself to be into all that kind of weirdness and what have you. I wasn't really aware that I was even psychic or who or what I was really. But I just remember being with this boyfriend one afternoon, and he claimed that there was a disincarnate entity around, and that it was really angry with him and really pissed off, and it was being really aggressive. I personally didn't sense anything, and I just kind of like looked at him a bit funny, as if to go, "Are you pulling my leg? This is just ridiculous." But he seemed genuine, and he seemed sincere, and I just kind of I think this was another situation that was basically made to get me to use my gift, but consciously, maybe. That's the feeling I get about it.
What are these entities? Are they thought forms created by Swartz and his people?
No, the shadow beings are very real. The shadow beings are very real, and
Where do they come from?
This disincarnate entity was also very, very real, that I dealt with this boyfriend as well. I don't know where the shadow beings come from. I think they just come from another dimension somehow. For some reason, they're working with the military and the Greys for whatever agenda that they're working through. But I don't have the full background or information on how or why or what have you. I couldn't tell you the full extent of that agenda or how or why.
So these are entities which inhabit people?
Yes, they can inhabit people. Yeah, I have seen that happen physically.
When have you seen that? Can you describe events?
Yeah, well, after I spoke to you on the telephone on Monday this week, I went to go and get the bus into the city centre where I live. And as I sat on the bus, a gentleman entered onto the bus.
Can you describe him?
Yeah, he was in his 40s. He was Asian. He looked quite poor. He didn't look. He was quite stocky, a little bit overweight, and he insisted, even though there were plenty of spare seats for him to choose from, on sitting next door to me. And I just sussed something was wrong, because I've had this happen to me a few times. He sat next door to me, and he was trying to engage in conversation with me, and instantly I just threw a mirror shield up and just thought, no, I'm not engaging energetically with you, because I just know that something's wrong here. And then the next thing I know, he's trying to throw his aura over mine and pour all these dark energies over me and into my aura, and I'm just keeping my shield up. And then I heard a voice, which I believe to be one of my spirit guides, going, "Just get off the bus right now, just get off the bus, don't stay, don't try shielding yourself anymore, don't try fending him off, just get off the bus." I got off the bus and grounded the energy out. But I believe that I believe that certain people are potentially, you know, you don't know how mind controlled this man may have been or what have you, but I believe some people are perhaps susceptible to possession by these entities, and I believe it was a shadow entity who was working through him. He had somehow was under control or possession of this entity, and it just kind of took him over, came on the bus and decided to, in the guise of a human being, to sit next door to me and dump all these energies on me. And then later on in the afternoon, you know, I actually received a visit from the shadow beings, you know, energetically, dimensionally, who basically threatened me from talking to you any further, basically, that if I kept quiet, they would leave me alone.
So this conversation and this, what we're talking about, they do not want to happen?
No, I've received several threats.
Du in een manarandrik moest Jesus mooi. De het moest hitstu mas niet.
So you mean we want to figure out about protection from this. How were you trained to protect against these entities, and also at what point do you need to cut and run? Because as I explained earlier, I had encounters with that at Sky Television, and I had to cut and run.
The memory that I have with my ex-boyfriend, I literally moved inside my ex-boyfriend's aura and into his physical body and joined my energies with his, whilst putting us both in a protective shield, and basically combined my energies with that of my boyfriend to kind of direct through intent, like for it to go away, but to go away peacefully, and just sent it energy as if to go, no, go on, off, out. And that was it. And when I kind of felt that it had gone, I kind of came out of my boyfriend's body, out of his aura, back into my own body. And, you know, to this day, I don't know how I knew how to do that. I really, really don't know how I knew how to do that, but somehow I just knew how to do it. And I remember my boyfriend at the time turning around and going, whoa, that was really, really kind of way out there, and you're quite powerful. And I just remember thinking, oh, well, you know, I'll just go downstairs and make a cup of tea then, shall I? And just carrying on like nothing happened. And that was how I kind of moved it away from him. Otherwise, it's a case of...
you mentioned a shield.
A shield. Basically, just putting yourself in a big shield, but it's as much to do with will and intent as much as anything else. Just kind of resonating in energy and of will and intent, and then directing them away with pure white light as much as anything else. Other than that, the only other thing that I can say is literally to try and disguise yourself and your energies and your aura. Excuse me. Some of the techniques that we were given, I believe, as children and also in my teenage years, were to be able to change your vibrational resonance so that it felt like a different person. To kind of put around yourself maybe a thought form of yourself as an old woman or of an old man or as a sporty young man, but just to kind of confuse and change your vibrational state. Excuse me. That's one of the other ways as well, to be able to escape, to get away, just to momentarily confuse them, because they're looking for somebody who looks like me, but you're sending out a thought form of you know, in your aura of you looking very much like somebody else, and to visualize that as crystally as you could in order to kind of get away from them.
So what sort of war is this? There's clearly a war going on of some kind of conflict where you're being trained to deal with this in some way.
Yeah.
Can you go into details about that? Or is that correct?
I'm not sure how correct it is. I know that I've been put into a lot of situations of kind of magical battle with different entities over a period of years now.
Can you list the entities?
Yeah, and Anunnaki, Greys, disincarnate people.
Can you mention what an Anunnaki is?
Yeah, they're reptilian beings.
And what does that involve?
That they can look slightly different. There's different kinds of reptilian entities, basically, but some of the reptilian entities that I was asked to engage with, I think the only way I'm going to be able to describe them is just to kind of like draw a picture and show you a picture of them as much as anything else. But
so you've been describing some of these things as in a blog.
Well, like a journal, like a record.
So you've made a video journal.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this blog that you started, and we'll feature some of them during the course of this.
Yeah.
But can you give us roughly why you started that? What's your motivation?
My motivation for doing it was just to have something where I was recording myself on my webcam on my laptop, basically, not to upload to the internet. It was just my way. Sometimes I find it easier to talk about my experiences rather than to write them down. Sometimes I find writing them down so emotionally and mentally exhausting that I find talking into the camera on my laptop a lot easier, basically. So that was one way of doing it, and also it was to be able to hand those to somebody like yourself, basically, to be able to, you know, access the information, see if it was valid or relevant or not, and a way it was just cathartic as well, as much as anything else. It was like a clearing process. Excuse me, being able to do that. Yeah.
Sip of water. It's just, so what I'm thinking of is how we got where we are today. You know, a mash, and how you were able to, you seem to be so close to what was going on with what was happening with myself at Skye, and the dark entities, and the huge spider thing that I encountered. So can we talk about that now?
Yeah, on more
the Amash project.
The Amash project. Why I originally contacted Amash.
How the story there. And what sort of things you dealt with Joanne and things.
Okay. I originally contacted Amash because I was just looking for help.
How did you find out about Amash?
I watched the original James Casbolt interview that you did, the James Casbolt one as opposed to the Michael Prince one, which I think you did this year. And basically, I just remember listening to it and just nodding all the way through it and going, "Yep, that's right. Yeah,
this
that's
is very
right."
important because James Casbolt follows on from Barry King, and there's no evidence for any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of question marks about James and Michael.
Yeah.
So how does this important that there's somebody else now coming forward to sort of say on that level?
Yeah. The things that triggered memories in me from that interview, I think he mentions children that were held in cages, and animals held in cages, and different kind of rituals whereby a child would be killed, and he believed that to be some kind of Freemasonic ritual, and it just triggered memories of me.
I mean, you're talking in a car about a blonde child in a cage drinking your blood.
Yeah, basically, in one particular ritual that I was put through, where they were releasing my blood, there was a child that was brought in a cage, and I think he'd been sadistically abused whilst inside this cage. Basically, they were humiliating him and torturing him, and they released him from the cage. He was completely and utterly naked, and they'd been torturing and abusing me. So I take.
Who's they?
The magicians that were present, the people that were present for the ritual, these two men and this woman, and basically the child was released from the cage, and he was asked to drink some of the blood in a cup that they gave him that was like a chalice. It was a chalice style cup.
Was this your blood?
Yeah, this is my blood that they took from my left arm. And basically, the child did drink a little bit of it. They gave it to him. And,
Are you on the altar?
Yeah, I'm still lying down on my back on the altar, and yeah, I'm completely naked on the altar. And they give the little boy some of this blood to drink, and he starts acting really hyperactive, really, really hyperactive. He's bouncing around all over the place, kind of like this, and kind of like running around the room. And the adults in there, the magicians, think that this is absolutely hilarious. They're absolutely in tears of laughter over this. So yeah, I have memories of children and also animals.
That resonates. What sort of animal? This resonates with what Casbolt was saying.
Yeah. That to me just kind of.
I thought I would talk about how I have a memory that I thought I should record of being in a Freemasonic lodge in Leicester. There's wood panelling on the walls and there's the black and white checkerboard for the wall. And my family are there, my mother, my brothers, there's some other people there as well. And I have one of my brothers standing over me with a sword pointing it at my heart, telling me that I've betrayed the coven and I need to be punished. But the main thing that stands out from this memory, and this is to do with no matter how much my family are involved in the gang stalking and all the satanic abuse, they are under mind control. And I have a memory of my mother. There's a man there who has a remote control, and when he presses it, it shines a green light, and as this green light shines, a green light shines on the left-hand side of my mother's neck. And it flashes onto the left-hand side of her neck. And she passes out cold onto the floor. I just thought that would be worth mentioning.
So are we talking ritual magic in a satanic kind of way,
yeah.
or are we talking extraterrestrial, or are we both? E.T.
I've experienced both. There, but yes.
So what kind of ETs or extra-dimensional entities have you had there?
The ETs that I remember from some of the satanic rituals that I was involved in, and it's always normally involved to do with me being put through absolute severe trauma and at points being told to dissociate whilst I'm being raped, basically, and one of the dissociations that I remember quite clearly is being told to imagine myself with the Care Bears. You remember the Care Bears from the 80s? Yeah. You know, just imagine yourself with Rainbow Bear or what have you, and that you're in a nice, safe place, and all these Care Bears are taking care of you.
The Rainbow
yeah.
Bear, the big bear,
yeah.
with the silly voice.
Yeah, and whilst I'm being raped, and basically they would be draining blood. I remember being raped by Draco entities as well, which was quite painful. I even.
And what's a Draco entity?
Well, it was just a big, tall, blue entity that quite strong, kind of dragon-looking, had these kind of thorny-looking spikes that came down here that kind of like crowned his head. He was like a dark blue colour, reptilian Draco entity.
Very tall?
Yes, very tall. A good 8 to 9 feet tall, this particular being that I remember.
Tall and slim, tall and strong?
Tall and strong, very strong. They're very strong.
And what relationship, how many of them were there? Were there different races?
Sometimes there may only be...
How did they appear? Were they just there all the time?
They were normally called or summoned at a particular stage during the proceedings and the ritual.
And what other entities were there? Humans?
Sometimes there would be...
Was this in a church or some... Where were these normally taking place?
In temples.
So they came in. So how many races you mentioned? If you list the races, list the different beings.
Okay, different beings. There's There's the Draco. There's the greys.
What type of grey? The short ones, tall ones?
There's the short ones, and then there's the tall ones.
What are the tall ones like?
They're normally in command and control of the shorter greys. They're greys, but they're paler. They're much paler, taller. They still have these eyes. Same.
Did you ever meet any of the round-eyed greys?
I don't have any memory of round eyes.
This is something that Casbolt and
I do know that there are programmed greys, because it's something that I've just intuitively felt and spoken about with other people, but I don't have any of those particular greys in my memory that I or at least not that I remember. So, but yeah, I do know.
So following on this James Casbolt video brought you on to eventually contact Amash.
Yeah, because in the credits it was an Underground Video UK and it said Miles Johnston, and then I just basically thought maybe this man can help me, or he knows a therapist who can help me to see whether this is all just complete bullshit or not, basically.
Would the therapist know that?
I don't know. I was just hoping that you'd know somebody who had experience of working with people.
People today, and we have people in the background.
Yeah.
So this happened at a time when I was going through a few problems with Sky Television in that I was meeting these entities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'd worked out independently that there was some kind of access to us through the electricity system. And the internet, then obviously is a secondary system. Mm-hmm. And you seem to back that up.
Yeah.
So without me to actually leading you on, what is your perception on all that?
My perception on that from this is just from what I've...
Because I have to say that you were so accurate with what you were saying that I actually thought you were actually from Sky TV.
I know you did. To
sort of send me up, sort of here we are, and then at the end while we're just talking.
Yeah, no.
So how did that come about that you were plugging into that?
Basically, I started having strange interactions with my own TV at home. I noticed that I would...
Do you have Sky at home?
No, I don't have Sky at home. I don't actually watch my TV anymore, apart from to watch DVDs. I don't watch television, terrestrial television. Is there
any reason for that, apart from just bad programmes?
The majority of stuff on TV is rubbish, and I only like a handful of programmes. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a geek. I like science documentaries, history documentaries, archaeology programmes, that sort of thing. Natural
scary
history
monsters coming out of the TV type of a thing?
No, there was nothing like that. What I tended to find was occasionally when I watched certain DVDs or when I watched certain programmes on TV, that after I'd switched the TV off, I might just, chill out and lie down on the sofa for a little bit, and I would have like hypnagogic images that I would see that were going on, that were like repeating what I'd just seen on the TV again and again and again, and it would be particular scenes that from what I'd just seen on the TV or a DVD that would be repeating again and again and again, and I just kind of thought that was a bit peculiar and a bit odd, basically, and I found that I could snap them out of my aura and just get rid of them, but I just kind of like, there was some kind of energy that was just kind of like playing again and again and again, and I was just kind of like, it's just something in me felt that was quite wrong. And then roughly about the same time as I started having problems like that, and I was pretty much done and through with watching TV anyway, where I live in Leicestershire, there's a lot of electricity pylons around the area. I literally live right on the edge of the city suburbs. So I've got the city one side and I've got the countryside on the other. So there's lots and lots of electricity pylons around. And there's a substation just round the corner from where I live. There's also quite a lot of mobile telephone masts as well, which causes energy problems for me anyway. I find it a difficult area to live in. But one of the things that I had noticed from time to time is that there were these small, cloaked, almost goblin-looking beings that every so often I would see interdimensionally on the pylons, and they would be doing some kind of work on the pylons. Where the cables join, and you've got those discs before you get the pylon, and then like the cable will flow through, then you get the discs, and then it was around those areas on the pylons that they were doing some kind of work.
No, you're not talking about ordinary electricity workers who work on the live wires.
No. They because nobody else is actually saw them. You know, I'd be walking by and nobody else would see them. And they always had these cloaks on, and they were always the small little goblin types. And basically they would be working on doing some kind of work on the pylons, and I've seen them a few times in the area where I live, that they're on these pylons.
Did you see any octiform life forms anywhere near them?
No, I didn't see octiform. No, not on the pylons. I don't.
Have you seen them elsewhere?
Yeah, I have memories of the octiform beings elsewhere. Yeah,
that's another thing that Casbolt refers to at the end of his latest interview. What would you call an octiform life form? Octopus, jellyfish?
They've just got. It's almost wrong to call them octiform, because I think they have more than 8 of these little wriggly legs or things that are coming out, to my memory. Maybe.
What sort of size are you talking about?
They're quite big. The kind of like main kind of like head body area is roughly about, say, maybe about that big. They're kind of sort of translucent looking. I don't know.
Like fluidic matter?
Yeah, like fluidic matter, and just kind of like long, kind of like squiggly, kind of like tentacle, kind of like legs that come out. They're very, very empathic. They're very, very telepathic.
And do they attach?
Oh, they're very good at being able to wheel into people and be able to make suggestions about how they might think or how they might feel. Yeah, they're not very pleasant either. They can get quite aggressive as well. And I remember them as having just one eye. I just remember them as having one eye. And I remember even in training in the My Lab facilities, having to learn how to telepathically contain these beings so that they couldn't attack, basically. And it always took more than one person to be able to telepathically and psychically contain these beings.
I mean, the things we've encountered at the radio station, at my pirate station, when we were under attack, with much smaller ones the size of one's hand.
Yeah.
We call them scuttlers, or
yeah.
They were called scuttlers by independent people I've talked to.
Okay.
Did you encounter anything like that? Crab-like creatures.
I have seen them inside equipment. Yeah, I've seen them inside equipment.
I mean, when I personally perceive them, as soon as you look at them, they go away.
Yeah. Mm.
So, have you encountered those, dealt with them? Yeah, I mean, under what circumstances?
I just remember being able to pick them up in equipment, in electronic equipment. I haven't, to my knowledge, had any dealings with those ones, but yeah, I have.
So it's in essence, just to round off the James Casbolt thing, and he's talking about a number of bases in this country. Now, you mentioned earlier about a number of bases across the country. Can you go over that now? Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, there's one in the kind of Berkshire area. That's underground. I believe that may be Peasmore, and that's quite deep. It's got several levels and goes quite deep underground. It's very deep and it's very dark. The energies there are very, very dark. I
mean, Peasmore's a Barry King invention. Are you
Right.
saying that's real? How are you backing that up?
I mean, basically, the only thing that I can think of is that, you know, more than one person has mentioned that particular place, and that is the only place that I can think of based on what information I have. I do know that it was a base. It was basically that area of the country. It was in Berkshire. It was underground, and that.
I mentioned other areas that you were targeted, or from in the east near Suffolk somewhere.
Yeah. Basically, on that was the one that's on the east coast, and I do believe that that's in Suffolk, kind of like towards southeast Suffolk. The other, there's another smaller facility that I remember that is somewhere northwest of Manchester somewhere. There's
You mentioned a tower, large tower.
Yeah, there's a large tower Yeah, there's a large kind of like
mast.
Yeah, large mast.
Could you describe the mast? Is it a stick with wires on it, or is it a structured tower without any guy wires on it?
I'm pretty sure it's a structured tower. I'm pretty sure that.
And then, what's special about that? Why there? I mean, that could be a cell phone or telecom tower or something.
Yeah, you're quite right. It could be. Well, I don't remember being above ground there. I remember being it's underground, and it's very, very vague.
So visualizing.
It's vague flashback memories that I have of that place at the minute. Though that's another set of memories that I've not fully explored just yet. I'm hoping to do that quite soon with another therapist. But basically, I just have memories of being in this underground facility. And
so we've got a few minutes left on this section.
Yeah.
One of the first things you said on your blog is that I'm a MyLab.
Yeah, I believe myself to be MyLab.
Now,
yeah.
Explain that. What does that mean to you?
To me, that means somebody who's been taken to government military facilities and has gone through some kind of programming process for a particular piece of work that they want you in the long term to be able to do for some kind of function that they want you to be able to perform. Some kind.
And can you identify any places where that might have been, or were there many different places?
For me, there's been a few different places, but that might also just be because of the nature of the work that I've been asked to do.
What is that work?
That work normally involved some kind of ritual. It normally was of a sexual nature. There were various facilities. Some of them were temples.
And what was that involved? Was this out of body? You've talked about out of body.
Yeah.
You've done work out of that. What does that mean?
Basically, some of the programming and the work I was asked to do, I was asked to leave my body to go and meet up with my handlers or programmers astrally and perform certain sexual acts whilst out of body.
With who? Or what?
There was a man who I believe to be called Richard. That's what he called himself. I remember him as having long curly ginger hair and a ginger beard, and he was one of the people that I would be asked to work with. He had a friend with him who I believe is called Ian, at least that's what he said his name was. He had short dark hair, and I would be asked to astrally project and meet up with these men astrally, and basically they would get me to perform various sexual exercises with them whilst out of body. I still to this day can't believe that I actually did it. If I'm honest, I think I'm quite shocked that I did it, because it's just not me. It's not who I feel I am, but I know that I have done that. So
this seems to be connecting with the Monarch program. Are you familiar with that?
I am not 100% familiar with it. I have heard about it. Right. So I know the general gist of what it's about, but I haven't read into it extensively at all.
Well, we leave that for the third section. Okay.
Okay.
And maybe we'll concentrate on all the relevant families and stuff you've been discussing, or things like that. Okay. Smoke break?
Yeah, that's fine. Smoke break's fine by me. Even if I'm being nagged not to smoke anymore.
Okay, Sarah, let's concentrate now on your husband.
Oh, my ex-partner.
Your ex-partner.
Yeah, we
How did that work out? What's involved there? Germany.
I always knew that I was going to meet somebody when I was 21 years old, and that I was supposed to have up to a 4-year relationship with him. And I did meet him, and it did happen. He was from a very wealthy background. I met him whilst I was still in training as a medical technical officer in ophthalmology, being trained in basically being able to do intraocular pressures, acuities, colour blindness tests, or all that kind of ocular measurement that I was being trained in at the time. And he was at university in art. He was doing a degree in art, and I felt a connection to him, and we seemed to get on really well. He's half German, half English. He comes from a very, very wealthy family. He comes from southern Germany, from the county of Schwabia. His mother is English, his father's German. His family have connections as in part of the Nazi regime and the Nazis. His great grandfather was so wealthy and so powerful as a general during the First World War that allegedly he had his own train line and his own train, which would take him and his family to their village where they lived in southern Germany at the time during the First World War. His mother's family allegedly owned a vast amount of land by the River Thames in Kingston, known as the area of Kingston now known as Canbury Gardens, and they Canbury Gardens.
Canbury
Gardens in Kingston, and they still own a property there.
Did you live there?
Yeah, I lived there in that house. I mean, we rented the house quite cheaply because it belonged to his mother. So, yeah, they still have a house there. But they basically built all the house. Apparently, from what he told me, they built all the houses in that area and then sold them off. So they're quite wealthy and quite powerful family. They have a massive farm as well in southern Germany. It's massive, vast tracts of land, and they rent the farm out, and they also rent some of the houses out that are attached to the farm as well. And they have his mother's parents. His grandfather was involved in educational reform during and after the Second World War, and from what I've been told, allegedly his mother and father, their parents, basically both his grandfathers met at some stage during the Second World War and agreed that their children would meet and would get married. So his mother and father were already like an arranged marriage, and they were arranged to meet and to get married when they got older. Which they did. They from what allegedly, because I can only go by what they've told me, but his mother went to school with and knew people from the Sainsbury family. So that's the kind of level of people that we're looking at, basically, and the connections that they have.
Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. What's the sinister part? What's the thing which makes it all?
The sinister part really started. It did start to transpire when I was living in Kingston upon Thames. Really, I started to be gang stalked when I was in Kingston. And
can you explain this concept of gang stalking?
Yeah, I basically would have people coming into my place of work, because I used to work in Waterstone's bookshop. Not the one in the Bental Centre, the one that used to be further down towards the marketplace and the riverfront. That shop no longer exists now. I think they only have the one in the Bental Centre. And I was being trained to be a buyer for Waterstones in the academic section. I was being trained to how to liaise with all the publishers and basically had my own budget and learning basic aspects of marketing. And I really loved that job, actually. It was quite an exciting job, really, to have, and I just loved being around the books all the time. Anyway, getting back to the point, I had people who would come into my place of work. I'd be on the shop floor doing my job, and people would come into the shop, and I would have comments made that were just so obviously about me without anybody else who didn't know me knowing that they would be about me. That's the only way that I can put it. I remember one woman kind of walking up, going up to a table, picking up some books in the travel literature section, and I was kind of standing around with my book list, kind of like doing a stock check basically of the books that we had and the books that needed returning, and this woman kind of made a comment about how people should know what I had in the cupboards at home, basically, and started making comments about how I should be kept in a fucking zoo, basically. I remember coming out of work and going to walk down towards the riverside, just by TK Maxx in Kingston. There's a pathway that takes you down to the riverside, and having my path deliberately blocked by a guy on a bicycle, which would seem kind of like nothing to somebody else, but when you've gone through gang stalking, one incident after another adds up, and there's definitely something wrong. I remember I'd go out for a cup of tea at the back of the store on a break, and there would be people shouting comments at me about how I was a really, really naughty girl, and I should really reconsider who I am and what I'm doing. I remember one occasion I was followed to work by a small gang of young men in their late teens, early 20s, who were again shouting the same kind of stuff, that I was a very naughty girl, that I should be really careful, that I needed to watch my behaviour, that everybody would know about me. And it was just basically a campaign to kind of raise me into a state of paranoia anyway. Basically, I would get people...
How did you cope with that?
I tried telling my partner at the time what was happening, and you know, I'd wake up at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be like a small group of people standing outside the house, banging on the front of the window and on the door, and I'd turn around and say, "What's all that commotion outside?" And my partner would just turn over and go, "What commotion? What's going on?" You know, which I now know to be called gaslighting, but at the time I just kind of I had no concept at that time that what I was going through.
What's the sort of time scale in this? How long has this been going on?
Since the age of 23, so 12 years.
So you were with your partner, your partner-to-be, in Germany, near the Austrian border. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It started off in Schwabia, which is like one of the most southernmost counties, very close to the Alps. Basically, we'd gone to the village where his parents live in the south of Germany.
What village is that?
It's called Wein, W-A-I-N. It's the village where Einstein was born, actually. There's a massive logging company there, and there's a baron's house there. There's a baron that lives in the area as well. And I went there early because I was basically starting to have a nervous breakdown from the gang stalking, basically, and I was...
What do you mean you went there? How did you get in the middle of to that place in Germany? What brought you there?
Basically, it was deemed necessary for me to have time off work, basically, because I was ill, and I was offered to just go over there on holiday.
Who offered you this?
My partner's family. They paid for the airfare and everything for me to go
over there. So this was essentially planned. They wore you down until they had you ready to come.
Yeah, they had me go over there, and I kept one of the things that I do remember, there was a lot of black helicopters going over the house all the time. And normally that wouldn't have worried me or affected me.
This is in England?
No, in Germany. Whilst I was over there on this holiday, and there was a lot of black helicopters going over. I remember the feeling of being watched all the time and being observed all the time.
What kind of house was this? Was this a mansion or something?
No, it's not a mansion. It is a big house. It is a big house that they live in, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a mansion. It's a very typical kind of old-fashioned, quaint German house, really. You know, it's got the storm shutters on the sides of the windows and what have you. It's got a massive cellar. They've got quite an extensive cellar of wines and things that they've got down there, and a workshop. They've got a massive, huge garden with a small orchard in it and a sty, and they kept ducks and all sorts. So yeah, it's a big house. It wasn't a mansion style house, but it was a very big, old-fashioned kind of quaint German house, really. I remember kind of when I first got over there feeling a sense of relief because, you know, I could get a break from what was going on back at home and, you know, try and talk to my partner and kind of explain to him what I was experiencing because, you know, at that time I still felt that this was all real and I didn't understand why nobody was believing me, really.
Because you still trusted your partner.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he loved me. You know, I genuinely believed that he loved me, and he, you know, he'd been so romantic for all these years and what have you, and basically did what he could to woo me and sweep me off my feet, and it blatantly worked. And, you know, I trusted him. You know.
So you're now in Germany.
Yeah.
What happened?
I remember hearing voices. And these voices would constantly be having a go at me and how I was this really, really bad and evil person and, you know, how I didn't deserve to live in the house that I was in Kingston. I didn't deserve the lifestyle that I had. I didn't deserve to live, really, how I was just this awful, really, really wretched, disgusting person. I would feel beings or entities around like I was being watched all the time, but I didn't know how to express that, and I didn't really believe myself to be psychic at the time. I wasn't really, again, the same as at the age of 17 when I had that incident with that ex-boyfriend. I didn't really understand that I was psychic or what was going on at all. And I remember on one occasion just kind of waking up and being in the bedroom, and for some reason I just felt that I was in receipt of an entity or a being that was called Lilith, and this was a dark female entity, and I had no idea of how to convince anybody of what I was seeing, sensing or feeling, except that this being kept insisting that she wanted to speak to me, and I just wanted her to get the hell away from me, and I really just didn't want anything to do with this. I was really, really frightened. I remember like thinking that maybe I needed an exorcist, and I tried to convince my partner to help me find an exorcist. He took me to a Jesuit monastery, actually, and all I remember of that is that he tried to explain to somebody, and apparently tried to explain to some woman that I was looking for an exorcist, and apparently, I mean, I don't know because I didn't know German that well, so I can't say what he actually said to her, which was a benefit to them, I suppose. But basically, this woman apparently said that, you know, the head of the monastery, the guy who would be responsible for exorcists from this monastery, wasn't there. He was away on some conference and wouldn't be back for 3 days. And so then I was taken to see the local Lutheran minister, who was the minister of the church in the village where his parents lived. And he just basically, he could speak English. He was an American guy who was basically ministering in Germany in that village. And he could speak English, and so he just turned around to me and said, well, you know, you may have been involved in some, you know, I don't know whether you've been involved in some dodgy aspects of the occult or not, but, you know, basically you need to reconsider your spiritual path and cleanse yourself of your sins, and we'll pray, you know. And I just remember thinking, this isn't what I need at all, you know, my situation's really, really very real, and I just felt like I was being brushed off from every side, that nobody was taking me seriously. And then, you know, I remember my partner turning around to me and saying, well, you know, could there be some other reason, you know? I've spoken to my father briefly on the phone because his parents were away at the time. They'd gone on a camping holiday somewhere, and he said that he'd managed to get hold of his dad by phone, and that his father said that I might have some kind of brain damage or something, or that a tumour might be growing, and that might explain, you know, what was happening to me and why I was experiencing what I was experiencing. And then I turned around and said the only thing I could think of is that maybe my subconscious had kicked off because I was sexually abused by my stepfather as a child, and that maybe there were just things there that I wasn't dealing with then because I was trying to rationalise things myself. But none of it still really made any sense. And I just kept getting huge waves, like massive waves of fear. I would just feel absolutely intense fear absolutely gripping fear, and I would just felt my fight or flight response was just going crazy. And you know, I remember kind of throwing a dressing gown on one morning and grabbing my cigarettes and just running out the house in nothing more than just this green dressing gown. I had nothing on underneath apart from, I think, some boots or some shoes, and I went running up the fields up towards some woods where, you know, we'd kind of hung out on previous visits to his family. There was loads of forests and woods in that area. And I'd kind of like sat by this boar hut, kind of like smoking cigarettes. And I remember my partner chasing me up there, and he was saying, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? I was like, there's people here, and they're spying on me, and they're saying all these things about me, and I'm really, really scared, and I'm really freaked out, and I don't know what's happening. And he was like, are these people here? Are they here now? And I was like, and I could sense these people, they were men. You know, I now know that I was just seeing them as people who are astrally projecting. But basically one of them had long dark hair and a long dark beard. And I was like, yeah, they're there, they're out there in the woods. And there were all kind of weird cracks and noises coming from within the woods, but that could be put down obviously to just like an animal that could have been going through the woods. But, you know, I could sense them, they were there in the woods behind me. And he was like, do you want me to go looking for these people? And I was like, well, yeah, you know, if you think you can find them, then fine. And he was like, he went off wandering into the woods, and he was like, look, there's nothing here, you're just blatantly going a bit mad, basically. And I remember when his parents came back off their camping trip, he explained to his parents what had happened, and my theory that it could just be my subconscious from being sexually abused as a child. And the thing that really, really broke my heart at that point was his mother turned around and said, how do we know she's telling the truth? She could be lying about the abuse that she suffered from as a child. And I just remember like thinking that was when I kind of realised I was never going to get any help or support off his parents at all.
You mentioned earlier, or the previous time, about this man with this very tall guy and some kind of ceremony that was going to, one of the other people was going to take you away to be murdered or to be raped and whatever, and he gave you some kind of thing. Can you remember that section? In Germany, you were at some kind of ceremony.
Yeah, there was
and there's this very tall
there was
guy, and one of the other guys wanted one of the girls, and then wanted you, and
yeah, basically
free to be taken.
Basically, I was taken to a house in Germany.
Is this at the same time?
I'm not sure which time this actually happened in, because there were, you know, I was with this guy for 6 years, so I'm not exactly sure within the 6 years when that happened.
So what happened?
Basically, I remember being taken to a manor house. There is a manor house in the Valley of Rot, R-O-T, where there's the River Rot that runs through, and I just remember being told by my partner at the time and his mother that the Rothschilds had a manor house there that had some kind of taxidermy museum full of different kind of like types of animals that had basically been stuffed, and it was a house that you know was open to the public, that you could go walking around. So I don't know if it's that house or not, but I was taken to a house. It was a manor house. It didn't feel like your standard kind of like German kind of like little quaint cottage or anything. I remember there was wood panelling on all the walls. It was dark stained. I remember the floor was dark and wood stained. I remember there were my partner there, his parents, there were some other people there as well. I remember there was a big fireplace, wooden fireplace, and there was a dark wooden table that 3 children were sat on, 2 boys and a girl, and that they were placed back to back, and that they were tied together. And there's some kind of ritual being performed on these children. That is really quite sick, actually.
What exactly was being done? Is this, what age are you and what age are they?
I would be in my early 20s. These children were no more than 6 years old. They were no more than 6 years old, these children. They were very, very young.
Was this in the same kind of experience that you'd had earlier when you were a child?
Not like this, no, because these children were killed. They were killed as part of a ritual.
So they were ritually killed.
They were ritually killed. They were bled to death. And I remember one.
You mentioned about their feet being cut off.
yeah, their feet were cut off, and that was how they bled to death, basically.
Well, terribly yet gruesome, where they chopped off.
Yeah, they were chopped off. They were literally hacked off. And I remember the children crying out in pain, and one of them peeing himself. You know, he literally wet himself. And a German woman comes up and she licks her finger like that, puts her finger in his urine, and then tastes the urine, and basically said something along the line of "Deine Pipi ist so süß," which would basically something along those lines, which basically translate to, "Oh, your wee tastes really sweet," you know, as in like, oh, you know, and then walking away and laughing, and the other people in the room are giggling, and these children are in absolute pain and they are screaming. And then the only other thing that I remember, and I feel really crap about this, and I'm not comfortable with this memory at all, is walking in a circle around these children, and I think I have some kind of sword with me, and there's some kind of, I'm basically being asked to do some kind of ritual, ceremony or performance for these people that are in this house. And then when the ceremony's finished, these people all come up to me afterwards and they congratulate me and they thank me, and they, you know, the bulk of the people go to leave. And then there's a man with short grey hair and a smart business suit on who comes up to me, and he basically wants to take me away to rape me. His intent is that he wants to take me to his bed and he wants to rape me, basically. And he sees me as quite disposable. You
mean you expect to be killed?
I had the intuition and the perception at the time that I would be raped and I would be disposed of afterwards. Yes. And I remember somebody going up to him and saying, no, this girl belongs to this man. You can't take her away. She's actually the partner of this man. You can't take her. And I just, the only other thing I remember is there's this man that's really tall. He's about 10 feet tall. He's got long dark hair, like long dark brown hair and a beard. And
that's huge.
Yeah, he's tall. He's quite tall, and he's quite stockily built.
So
no, he's stockily.
He's a huge giant.
Yeah, he's stockily built. He's well built, and he basically turns round to my partner and his family, and he has a long wand that is like a prism. So if you looked at it from the end, it would look like a triangle, and it's white and it's long. It's about this long, and he basically turns round and he says, "Don't worry. After this, she won't remember a thing." And he basically grabs hold of me, smiles, touches the end of it to my forehead, and I just pass straight out. I remember being really, really kind of dizzy and dozy after that. I remember half being dragged out the house and then thrown into the back of my partner's parents' car, and then after that I'm just completely knocked out and asleep, and they drive back to their house. But yeah, that's that memory.
But the thing is, something may have happened between when you got...
Yeah, but I don't know.
Did you recall any physical bruises or hurts or injuries?
No, I used to get weird headaches all the time, normally down the left-hand side of my head. I would always get really, really intense, painful headaches. It would literally feel like my head was going to split in half. And I remember I would get weird clicks at the top of my head for years, and even weird clicking noises inside my ear. But, you know, nothing... No, I don't remember any bruises or marks that I had from that time,
so,
no.
Any consequences of that event?
I'm personally absolutely shocked and completely gutted. It's not what I ever anticipated, and it's not what I ever wanted to remember. And to say I feel shocked and gutted is a complete understatement. I just feel...
Was this the only event of that nature?
Where I'm involved in something that awful.
What was this 10-foot tall being?
I get my intuition, and the impression I get is that somehow or another he's Syrian, but he has reptilian...
You mean Syrian as in extraterrestrial?
Yeah, like he's a Syrian being, but he's also somehow Draco related or connected. Maybe he has maybe he's a hybrid of some kind.
Symbols on him at all? Any kind of...
The main symbol that I've had over the years from childhood, including with some Anunnaki beings that have visited me, is a single gold triangle. that sometimes people would wear, and it's on a gold chain, but that's it. That's it.
You mentioned the Anunnaki you've met. Can you discuss them?
Yeah, I actually got trained in ritual magic by some Anunnaki beings. That was part of my control and my programming for things that they wanted me to be able to do.
How did they train you, and what was involved? What did they look like?
I remember on one occasion being in my bedroom, for instance, and there was a gust, a blow of wind, and you know, the house was full of double glazing. There were air vents in the walls to kind of like allow airflow through, but all the windows are double glazed, and there was no windows or doors open in the house on this day, and the only other place that a whirl or gust of wind could have come through was the fireplace. But basically there's a gust or a whirlwind that comes through. You know, when wind catches through a really, really tight space and it whistles, it was that kind of gust. And then the next thing I know, there's this really tall being standing beside my bed in my bedroom, and he's got a long red cloak on, and he's got this gold triangle.
Similar to the one you were to meet later in Germany?
This particular being that manifested, this particular incident that I remember happened after Germany, when I was back in Leicester after I'd broken up with my partner and just like ran for my life, basically.
You left your partner as a result of that?
I left him as a result of all the stuff going on. Yeah, I left him as a result of all the stuff that was going on. I just I knew that my partner didn't believe me or trust me. I knew something weird was going on. I didn't know how to prove it. I didn't know how to get anybody to believe me, and I just basically I just got the impulse that I just needed to get out and run. Basically, I just packed my bags and I ran.
What was the incident that made that happen?
That incident happened when I was living with my ex-partner in Leeds. That made me leave him. I'd already tried leaving him about 2.5 years previously, after all the incidents that happened in Kingston, and he literally came crawling back on his hands and knees going, oh, you know, I can deal with you and your mental health problems, you know, and I still love you, and I still want to be with you, and I still want to look after you, and I adore you. And I just kind of like went, oh, okay then. And after he completed his master's degree, we moved up to Leeds because he got a post with Leeds Metropolitan University to be a technician, but also to train to be a university lecturer. He was doing his PGCE, and we lived in a house in Chapel Allerton in Leeds, which is quite a kind of trendy area to live in, and we lived on Victoria Road, number 76, which was a end of terrace. There's like a little 2 up 2 down end of terrace house. And I was still in receipt of gang stalking there, and there were some very, very bizarre incidents. Again, I felt that I was being watched all the time. My partner's brother also lived in Leeds, and his girlfriend was Greek. Her father is actually involved in banking, and she had a degree in bioengineering that she'd got from Leeds University as a master's degree. And the house that we were living in, by sheer coincidence, just happened to be next door to the Greek consulate who was living in Leeds, in Chapel Allerton, and she just happened to know him. She just happened to know who the Greek consulate was. She was always quite boastful anyway as a lady, and so she made no bones about the fact that she knew this chap. The thing that made me leave him in Leeds, the gang stalking had got really, really bad. There was all kinds of harassment and abuse going on, and one of the incidents that happened was on one particular occasion. I had stopped sleeping with or having sex with my partner because things was too weird and too intense, and he was being quite abusive anyway, and he'd been abusive sexually and emotionally and what have you in the past anyway. And I was in a complete tailspin. I didn't know who or what or where I was or what the hell was going on anymore. I was still convinced at that time that I was potentially just mentally ill, and that I just needed to heal myself and my brain somehow, basically. And I was sleeping in the spare bedroom, which was also the study room in our house. And I remember on one occasion feeling the side of the house, because we're an end of terrace, being bashed and battered, and the house was shaking. And I remember turning round to my partner and saying, "Can you not hear that noise? Can you not feel the house shaking? There's somebody shaking and battering the outside of our house." And he just said, "No, I can't hear a thing. I can't hear a thing." And there's no way that he could not have heard it, really, in retrospect. But at the time I just thought, maybe I'm hallucinating then. The next thing that I know is I see this man who's got really tight black curly hair and a beard, and he appears in the spare bedroom one evening. I've been feeling really sorry for myself, and I've been doing my usual trick of like necking half a bottle of gin and drinking loads of beer. And I think at this point I was smoking a ridiculous amount of cigarettes, like 30 to 40 cigarettes a day, just because I was just in such a state, basically, and I'd almost lost the will to live. I was feeling suicidal pretty much. And this man turned up, and he had a silver cloak on, and he had some kind of some kind of entity with him, some kind of like small gangly little entity with him. And he
humanoid?
They were humanoid, yeah.
You mentioned one.
Oh,
yeah,
well, the being and the man, yeah. That, you know, head, two arms, two legs.
Was the tall guy the same height as before? 10 feet?
Just normal human height, this particular chap. But yeah, the most specific thing I remember is the long silver sparkly cloak that he had on. And basically he turned around to me and he said, "One way or another, you're going to have to admit that you're a black witch." And I was just like, "But I'm not a black witch. I don't even have anything to do with witchcraft. You know, there's just no way. There's no way that I'm a black witch, and I don't have anything to do with witchcraft, and there's just no way." And then he basically went through a series of events in my life where he said, "You knew that you had, the ability to be able to do these things." And one of the incidents that he recalled was when I was dating this one guy, and, you know, we'd been out clubbing one evening, and he came back to my house where I was living at the time, and I just remember sitting there thinking, I can make you fall in love with me. And I remember just sending out the will and the intent for this man to kind of say, "I love you," and he did. And again, at the time when that happened, which was many years before, I didn't even believe myself to be psychic, so I had no idea. But this was one of the incidents that this being.
So all those experiences you'd had as a child, you'd forgotten.
Well, yeah, I didn't know about them. I mean, they were buried in memories. They were repressed. I wasn't meant to remember them, I don't think.
So you left your husband after this event with this tall guy?
Yeah, basically.
Again, this other guy.
Yeah, basically.
The entity. What was the entity? Was it a dog or what? Or
it was some. It was just like I don't know. It had two arms. It had two legs. It had a head.
How tall?
No more than about that tall.
2 feet?
Yeah, no more than that. It was just a small
spindly, hairy?
Yeah, spindly, kind of.
Big eyes, small eyes?
Small eyes, just normal small eyes.
Naked?
Yeah,
clothing?
Completely naked. Completely naked. And
black? Pink? What colour?
So, kind of a slight opalesque kind of green colour. A slight opalesque kind of green colour. And I remember basically this man in this silver cloak kind of did something to me and my energies and my energy bodies. And again, because I didn't believe myself to be psychic, and because I I wasn't switched on, there's no way I would have known to put myself in a psychic shield or anything. Excuse me. And I remember just being like kneeling on the bed and shaking, just thinking, "God help me, God help me, God help me, God help me," because I was just so scared. And I remember feeling the intent that this entity that was with him was going to possess me somehow. And I just remember thinking, "No, please don't, please don't, please don't." And then the next thing I know, this entity comes up to me. It somehow manages to crawl inside my base chakra. It moves up the chakra channels up to my heart chakra. It's moving around inside my body doing something, and then it goes back down and comes out again. And at that point, I'm relieved that I'm no longer have this entity inside my body, but so traumatized that something managed to do that. It managed to break inside my body, that it managed to get inside of me. And I just completely broke down. Completely and utterly broke down. I was in absolute bits after that. And just ran, got a suitcase, just filled it full of clothes the next morning. And I just knew to leave. And as I called a taxi to get to Leeds train station, and as I was waiting for a taxi to get to Leeds train station, there was a woman with kind of blondie ginger hair standing outside the house, and I remember her talking to a man outside the front of my house, because it's a terraced house and it's just single pane glass, you know, the old-fashioned sash windows with the single pane glass, so you can hear everything that's being said through those outside. Oh, well, she's now going to spend the rest of her life moving from place to place, being known as the crazy secretary wherever she goes, and is now permanently banished. And she's not welcome, and there's no chance for her anymore. There's going to be no recompense from this. She's made her bed, she can lie in it now. And then, that was it. And then she got in a car and drove off. It was their way of basically letting me know what was happening to me. There was...
When is this? When?
I was 26 years old when that happened.
This is 10 years ago?
Well, I'm 35 years old now, so it's 9 years ago. That's 9 years ago.
So what sort of things have happened since in the closing moments? What's brought you, how have you got between then? How are you able to rebuild your life?
I haven't, I literally have gone from place to place being gang stalked.
So essentially you have to break that spell.
Yeah, somehow I've got to break that spell, definitely. But yeah, I've just gone around from place to place, gang stalked, entity break-ins, abductions taking place, mind control taking place, where I'm triggered, and I've done other things since then.
Can you remember any of those?
Yeah, I can.
Do you want to remember those things?
No, not particularly.
Can we do so safely now?
Yeah. Some of the things that I was asked to do, I would be telepathically contacted, or voice to school technology. I'm not sure which they were using, what was going on. And basically, I would be told to go to a certain bar or a pub in the city centre at a certain time on a certain day, and to wait for further instructions, basically. And I would turn up, and I would always know the people or the person that I was supposed to meet, because they would have some kind of glow around them that I could see with the physical eye, some kind of extra glow around their being, their body, their aura that I was meant to see. And there would be normally telepathic communication going on. They would ask me questions, and I can't remember any of the conversations that really took place that way. I do remember on one occasion being told to cycle into Blaby and to go to a particular... to Blaby. It's a small kind of like village come town on the outskirts of Leicester. I was told to cycle to a particular cottage in Blaby, and with a red door, and to knock on the door and ask for Mark Thomas. And I knocked on the door, and a man who's quite familiar to me now from memories that I've recovered, who had blonde hair and blue eyes, answered the door. And I said to him, I'm really sorry to bother you, but is Mark Thomas here? And I just remember him smiling, and he went, no, there's nobody here called Mark Thomas. And the only other original memory I had was of him closing the door and of me cycling home, kind of like thinking that I'd been, bummed out by something, and something had gone wrong. I went to Blaby again this year. Wesak, a Buddhist festival, was held in Blaby Community Centre this year. I went to Blaby to the Wesak festival that was being held at Blaby Community Centre, because I still attend a Theravada Buddhist temple, basically, mainly for meditation instruction as much as anything else. And I arrived early, so I decided to go and take a walk in a park there, because I hadn't been to this park before. It's called Buskell Park. And I walked through the gates, and it's like the old grounds of an old manor house. The old manor house has been turned into business offices. It's like used by some company now. And I walked round to the back of the park, and there's a parade of trees there. And as soon as I started walking up this parade of trees, I just got flashback after flashback after flashback after flashback after flashback. I've been here before, I've been here before, I've been here before, and yet I had no conscious memory of being there before. But all of a sudden it was just trigger after trigger after trigger, and I just remember being tied to a tree in this park, and I'm naked with just a black robe on, and there are these men there. There's the one with long ginger hair and a beard. There's the one with long dark brown hair and a beard. There's a woman there with short...
the very tall one?
No, not the very tall one. He is a tall chap, but he's not the very tall one from Germany. A woman there with short grey hair and glasses. There's a few different people there. There's a fire going. I'm basically being tormented and abused and pretty much spat at and slapped whilst tied to this tree and being abused. And the next thing that I remember is they untie me and I fall to the floor, and I feel really, really sick, and I'm basically kind of dragged on the floor, and they're like, okay, right, now she's ready, get her. And they drag me further up this parade of trees, and round the corner there's kind of like a little hill, and it's a man-made hill, and it actually has a doorway in it. It's got like a little gated doorway. I think it's, the old cellars that the gentry would have kind of stored.
Ice houses.
Yeah, ice houses that they would have stored their food in. It's one of those. And the next thing I know is that I'm taken inside this little round ice house on this little man-made hill.
Yeah.
And I'm basically tortured and abused in some ritual and raped in there. And
How long? This is recent?
That, again, would have happened when I was... I would have been roughly, I was 26 when I left my partner, and I'd gone back to Leicester, and all that stuff had happened, and I reckon it happened sometime just before my 27th birthday.
So, in the closing section, is there any particular things you really want to get across? Families, mind control, or whatever, and how to get out, how other people, have you other things involved?
There's been a catalogue of instances where I've been like reprogrammed and re-triggered since then.
When did that happen?
There was an incident.
Who did it involve?
There was a particular archdruid who's also a high priest who's known to me, and his partner, who befriended some healers who were friends of mine who were trying to help me heal. At this time, those healers and myself did not know who or what I am, or what I'd been through, or what was happening to me, or how or why. And so, as far as I'm aware, this couple wouldn't know anything about mind control or this side of things at all, or conspiracy theories. They just weren't into that anyway. He was an NLP healer, and so he was trying to help me anyway.
NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah, he was trained in neuro-linguistic programming, and he was also trained in timeline therapy. And
What's timeline therapy?
Basically, it's he would get me to kind of like stand there and visualise my future in front of me in a timeline, and my past behind me on a timeline, and then he would get me to kind of like go through emotional processes and techniques to find out where the root of a memory was of a memory or an emotion was coming from, whether it was in the future or in the past, or whether it was in a parallel timeline. And if it was a parallel timeline, could I step to the left or the right depending on where it was, and was it parallel to, or was it going diagonally to the original timeline that I was on now, to kind of like find the cause of emotions and memories
So
and what
is
have you.
that what's allowed you to remember what you've just been discussing?
It allowed it. I think it may have started triggering processes. Yeah, because I started to remember that at some stage in this life I'd been to Europe, not to Europe, sorry, to Egypt, and I'd been to and stood outside the King's Pyramid, and yet I have no recollection of actually travelling to Egypt, and yet I have this memory of being in Egypt, and I'm there with 12 other women. There's 13 of us, and we're outside the Grand Pyramid in Egypt, and we're doing a rite of Osiris, and all I know is that it's on behalf of the war effort. And
that's World War II. Which war?
A war going on in the Middle East. A war going on in the Middle East. I don't know if it's the Kuwait War or which war, but it's I mean, I put down that it's potentially during the Kuwait War.
10 years ago.
Yeah, and
Jeez, longer.
And yet I have no recollection of actually physically travelling to Egypt, and I just thought that I remember at the time thinking that was a very weird memory, and why would I be in Egypt, and I kind of remember thinking that maybe it was completely false, maybe it was completely and utterly false. But I'm there with these other women, and we're there, and we're facing in a particular direction outside the Great Pyramid, and we're hailing the sun, and we're asked to go through a rite of Osiris, and I remember.
What does that involve? Is it painful or?
No, it's just some kind of ritual incantation or invocation that goes on, where we were basically calling upon the aspect of that god to facilitate the energies of which were to facilitate whatever agenda Britain had with the war at that time. And
so in closing, where do you feel you are now?
I feel that I still feel that I'm under mind control, and that even this year I believe myself to have been triggered and abducted again, and put through a pretty painful ritual that involved being sexually traumatized again. I still believe myself to be in receipt of not in receipt of, but under mind control.
But you're very adept at detecting things and entities and stuff like that.
I've become more aware of what I am in that regard. Definitely, I've become more aware of my gifts.
You've been able to use that to defend yourself and fight back.
Yeah, but it's been very, very difficult. It's been very, very difficult, and I'm going through a process at the minute of learning how to break that situation altogether if I can, and stop it if I can. I'd really like to. Actually, stop the abductions as well, and the visits by shadow entities and by Draco. That would be great if I could stop that. That would be fabulous. And also to explore further any more memories that I've got, and how and why, and figure out more of what's occurred and why, and what the agenda was, and that at the minute it's all really still a process of finding out and exploration, really, to be honest, about what's going on and what's happened. I'm still being gang stalked. I still get a lot of psychic surveillance as well.
What's psychic surveillance?
I will find myself being remote viewed a lot, and people.
For instance, are we being remote viewed now? Have you thought of anything going on now?
Yeah. There's the normal guy that there's a guy that I see quite often who is coming from that direction with short dark hair, and he's got a white shirt on. He's coming through. So.
Is he one of the stalkers?
Yeah, he is. He's one that I tend to find myself being remote viewed by the most, but he's also like been out there in the middle of the street in a smart suit and kind of randomly stood there with a finger pointing at me going, ha 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 ha, there's the crazy secretary who's lied about a childhood sex abuse, and then as though nothing's happened, just kind of standing there like this. I've seen him before in the middle of the street doing that. He's even done that outside my flat, so on the street outside my flat.
Okay, well, what we want to do is just stop.
Mm-hmm.
So, after all this, what do you feel is the future in summary? What do you have to say for other people who've been in this situation?
If you're having any memories of this sort, get in contact with somebody, find somebody that can help you. There's a group that I know you're involved with called Amash. Just find somebody that can help you. The memories are shocking. They're really, really scary. They're really, really frightening, and it's too difficult to go through this on your own. It's too difficult. Believe you me, I know. I've got post-traumatic stress disorder, and I've self-harmed over this, and I've wanted to throw myself off a cliff or kill myself many times over these memories, because it's really, really not easy. Just find some help. These things are there. They are real. They really do happen. They're really. Mind control is very, very real, and just that's the only thing that I can really say. Just find somebody to help you. There are people out there. There are people who will help you and who will support you. And if they can't, then any decent soul will pass you on to somebody who can and who will. I don't really know what else to say, really. I don't even know what else really to say about myself. I'm still trying to have a normal life, really, because that's all I've really wanted, is some stability in my life and a normal life, really. Which I've found so difficult, if not next to nigh on impossible, because of the gang stalking, let alone anything else. And now with all these memories and the post-traumatic stress disorder as well, it's just... I just don't know.
Is recalling these memories helpful to you?
On some levels, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And to find out that they are real memories, especially when working with a therapist, is extremely helpful, because you know, it helps to anchor you, basically, and to make you more stable, and to get some sense of where you are and who you are and what you are. It really, really does help incredibly. I mean, Joanne Summerscales has helped me, and I can't thank her enough, because she really, really did help me a lot, actually, in kind of knowing.
And she was working on you today?
Yeah, she has. She did some work on me today. I was attacked by shadow entities this afternoon, so yeah, they tried attacking my crown chakra and attaching to me, and she managed to help get whatever they tried throwing at me at my crown chakra out and bring my energies back into balance. So but yeah,
well, thank you very much, Sarah.
You're most welcome.
And this is Basis 10.
Okay.
This is to deal with the other stories which I've been researching, we've been researching over the years, and we'll find a solution to this.
Thank you.
And with your help and with your appearance, that'll help others and help us get this problem sorted out. Okay. Good night.
The blogs of Sarah Stanga.